Hey friends, today I'm going to tell you a story that might resonate with each and every one of us. It's a story about how trust can be shattered, but despite that, a person can find the strength to move forward. We all face betrayal at some point, whether in relationships, friendships, or even at work. But what's important is not losing yourself and finding the strength to come out stronger. This is the story of a person who I can say, happiness smiled upon. And if you've ever gone through something similar, this story might give you some answers to the questions that have been troubling you. So get comfortable and let's dive into this incredible journey. Part 1. The calm before the storm. It was always supposed to be like this. Sophie and I against the world. From the moment we met, everything seemed easy. We were the couple everyone admired, the one that perfectly complemented each other. She was the perfect balance in my life. Bold, beautiful, spontaneous. I, on the other hand, was more grounded, introverted, and analytical. Together, we seemed unstoppable. Our relationship wasn't without its problems. Nothing ever goes smoothly in a relationship. But we always found a way to work through them. At least that's what I thought. Sophie had a certain charisma, an energy that made everything around her seem brighter. Her laugh was infectious, and her smile was magnetic. I loved her, without a doubt, and I thought she loved me just as much. But then things started to change. At first, it was barely noticeable. Sophie started spending more time with her friends, often texting late at night or disappearing for hours without explaining where she'd been. I tried not to pay much attention to it. Work had been busy, and everyone needed their space, right? I convinced myself that everything was fine, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Part 2. The suspicion grows. As the days went on, my suspicions continued to grow. Sophie, once so attentive and present, began to drift further away. There were times when I would come home from work to find her staring blankly at her phone, her face flushed, as if she'd been in the middle of a conversation that she quickly shut down as I walked in. Her story started to feel inconsistent, like she was trying too hard to cover up something, but I didn't want to confront her without proof. After all, I trusted her, and I didn't want to doubt her without a valid reason. It wasn't just the subtle signs either. One evening, I came home early, planning to surprise her with her favorite takeout dinner. I let myself in quietly, only to hear voices coming from the living room. It was strange, as Sophie was supposed to be alone. The voice was unfamiliar. A man's voice. I froze in the hallway, standing there in silence. I could hear them laughing. Sophie's laugh, a laugh that should have been reserved for me, the one I cherished, was different. It was flirtatious, playful, like she was someone else entirely. My heart sank in my chest. I didn't know what to do. The man's voice grew louder, more familiar, and my blood ran cold when I recognized it. It was Alex, the guy who worked with Sophie at her office. The same man she had told me was just a friend. Part 3. Confrontation. The tension that night was unbearable. I didn't confront them immediately. No, I needed to gather my thoughts, to process the betrayal that was slowly unraveling before me. I waited in silence, listening as they continued to talk, unaware of my presence. It felt like I was a ghost in my own house, watching my life slip away without being able to do anything about it. After what felt like an eternity, I heard footsteps. Sophie must have walked toward the kitchen, and in that moment, I knew it was my chance. I stood up and walked into the living room, my heart pounding in my chest. When she saw me, her face went pale. The man, Alex, looked guilty and stiff, clearly caught off guard. Sophie quickly stood up from the couch, stammering, I didn't expect you to come home early. I didn't want to hear her excuses. I didn't want the words she had rehearsed in her head. I just wanted the truth. So this is what's been going on, I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though the rage was bubbling just under the surface. This is who you've been seeing behind my back? I trusted you, Sophie. How long has it been happening? Sophie's eyes welled up with tears. She opened her mouth, but no words came out at first. Then finally she spoke, her voice small and shaky. I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. It was a mistake. I didn't want to hear the excuses. It didn't matter how it started or why. All I could see was her betrayal. Her eyes darted to Alex, who looked away, clearly uncomfortable, like he was ashamed of what he had done. I turned to Alex, my anger now fully focused on him. And you knew about me. You knew we were together, yet you still did this. You're no better than her. Alex, who had been nervously shifting on the couch, now stood up slowly. He looked at me with a guilty expression, his voice quiet, almost apologetic. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. It just happened. The words seemed so empty, so meaningless. I could barely stand to listen to him. My eyes met Sophie's one last time, her tear-streaked face almost pleading with me to understand, to forgive. But I couldn't. The trust I had in her was shattered. Without saying another word, I walked out of the room, my mind spinning. I needed space. I needed to think. And for the first time, I realized I was done. Part 4. The Aftermath. The days that followed were nothing short of a blur. I spent my time at work, keeping busy, trying to suppress the growing pain inside me. Each passing hour, the image of Sophie with Alex, the thought of their betrayal gnawed at me like a persistent ache. I kept my distance from both of them. Sophie had tried to reach out several times, but I couldn't bring myself to speak to her. Every message she sent felt like another wound, another lie that I didn't want to hear. But despite the anger, despite the heartbreak, a part of me missed her. I remembered the good times, the way she smiled, the way her hand fit perfectly in mine. I remembered the promises we had made to each other, the future we had planned. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt, it was the loss of what we once shared. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, I found myself staring at my phone, her name blinking on the screen. It was a text message, another apology, another attempt to make amends. I took a deep breath and read it. I love you. I made a terrible mistake. Please, let's talk. I miss you. For a moment, I considered responding, considering giving her another chance. But then I thought about Alex. I thought about how she had looked at him that night, how she had held his hand when I wasn't looking. The trust I had placed in her, in both of them, was gone, and no amount of apologies could fix that. Instead of replying, I deleted the message and turned off my phone. I needed closure, and I wasn't going to find it in her words. I needed to let go, to move on. Part 5. The Turning Point. Time moved on, and so did I, or at least I tried to. The initial pain began to dull, replaced by an empty void that lingered like a shadow in the back of my mind. Work became my sanctuary, a distraction from the emotional chaos I felt. I threw myself into my projects, focusing on the small victories that I had once overlooked. It wasn't happiness, but it was progress. And then one day, something unexpected happened. I ran into Sophie. It was a random encounter in a coffee shop of all places. I was standing in line, minding my own business, when I turned around and there she was, looking as beautiful as ever, but different. There was a heaviness in her eyes, a weariness that hadn't been there before. For a brief moment, we stood there, just staring at each other. She was the first to break the silence, her voice trembling slightly. "Hi," she said, a faint, sad smile on her face. I didn't know what to say. The words were stuck in my throat. Part of me wanted to lash out, to scream at her for what she had done, but the other part of me just wanted closure. I needed to know why. "Why?" I finally asked, my voice rough with the emotions I had kept bottled up for so long. "Why him? Why did you do it?" She looked down as if the question itself hurt her. "I don't know," she whispered. "I was confused. I made a mistake, a horrible one, and I've been punishing myself for it every day since." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had prepared for anger, for an excuse, for anything but this raw, unfiltered guilt. "I loved you," she continued, her voice cracking, "and I still do. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even deserve it. But I needed to tell you that I'm sorry. From the bottom of my heart." I took a step back, the weight of her confession sinking in. I felt something stir inside me, a mix of anger, pity, and maybe even a hint of sorrow for her. I had spent so long holding on to my bitterness, and now here she was, broken and vulnerable. But I couldn't allow myself to fall back into the trap of false hope. "I can't forgive you," I said softly, my heart heavy but resolute. "I don't know if I ever will, but I hope you find peace. I'm moving on." Her face crumpled with emotion, and for a moment I saw the person I once loved, the person I thought she was, before everything changed. But I knew it was time to move forward, to finally let go of the past. As I walked away, I felt lighter. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad either. I was free. Part 6. The final step. The days that followed were strangely peaceful. I had put the past behind me, or at least that's what I thought. But the truth was, letting go of something, especially a person you once loved, takes time. It's not as simple as waking up one day and deciding you're done with the hurt. It's a process, a long, sometimes agonizing process. But with each passing day, I found myself becoming more comfortable in my own skin. I stopped replaying the past in my mind, stopped wondering what I could have done differently. I didn't need closure from Sophie anymore. I had found it within myself. It was a strange feeling, but it was also liberating. I wasn't the person I had been before, full of doubt and sadness. I was someone new, stronger, wiser, and more self-aware. One evening, as I was sitting at my kitchen table, a glass of wine in hand, I received a message. It was from Sophie. I hesitated for a moment before opening it, unsure of what to expect. But when I read the words, I was struck by a surprising sense of calm. "I've been working on myself. I hope you're doing well. You were always a good person, and you deserve someone who truly values you. I won't reach out again, but I wanted to thank you. You helped me grow, even if I didn't deserve it." There was no apology this time, no plea for reconciliation, just a simple message of respect and closure. And in that moment, I realized that the closure I had been searching for had already come. Not from her, but from me, from my own growth, my own journey. I felt no anger as I read her words. I felt no sadness either. Just a quiet peace that settled over me. I had loved her, and in a way, I always would. But I had moved on. The chapter was closed, and I was free to write my own story. In the months that followed, life unfolded in ways I hadn't anticipated. New relationships, new experiences, new opportunities. I wasn't defined by the past anymore. I was defined by who I had become, a person who had been hurt, but who had also healed. Sophie, on the other hand, disappeared from my life as quietly as she had entered. I heard rumors from mutual friends that she had left town, that she was still trying to put the pieces of her own life together. But it didn't matter to me anymore. What mattered was that I was moving forward, and I had no room for anything or anyone that threatened to pull me back. I had been betrayed, yes, but in the end, it was that betrayal that led me to the person I had become. A stronger version of myself, someone who could face whatever life threw his way with confidence and without looking back. And that in itself was the happiest ending of all. So that's how this story ended. Betrayal isn't just about losing trust. It's also an opportunity for personal growth. We all go through tough moments, and each one of us can find the strength to let go of the pain and keep moving forward. No matter how difficult things get, it's important to remember that there's always a brighter future ahead if we're willing to embrace it. If you liked the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with anyone who might be in a similar situation. Leave your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what you think. Thanks for being with me, and I'll see you in the next video.